In this video, I'm gonna show you a video that I almost made last weekend, and I wished I would have, because if I had, it would have essentially been a prediction video that was followed up 3 days later by the fulfillment of that prediction, if you want to call it a prediction. Where Mr. MB3 shows a fake UFO in the sky, pretends that he believes it's a UFO, and leads everyone down that rabbit trail where I don't think he really believes it's a UFO, and he's kind of running some psyop-y stuff. And then 3 days later, he shows a video where he says the trails in the sky are a form of mining for gold in the sky, and how that's why it happens at a greater quantity when there's an incoming solar flare, because they're reaching up and they're catching the gold coming in from the sun. He doesn't believe that either. But just so it's clear, I still support MB3. I would still send him money if he asked again. He has never asked for money except for once. He's never said my PayPal or my Venmo or my Patreon or my Cash App. One time he asked for money, and I sent what I could. And if he asked again, I'd send what I could once again. I trust that he knows what he's doing, and or the people who he's working for know what they're doing when they're running these little psyops. So we'll get to that here in a minute, but first, let's talk about the geomagnetic storm that's going on, and I'm going to throw together a few clips regarding that, and here's the first one.
You guys are also going to see a rare, what looked like auroras sitting on the ground. Check out this video sent in by Karina Watson from the night of March 5th of 2025 at 11:27 p.m. Look at these auroras. They look like they're sitting on the ground. How strange is that? Going from gray.
Watch how quickly he flashes the word geomagnetic storm up on the screen when he says, how strange is that?
From the night of March 5th of 2025 at 11:27 p.m. Look at these auroras. They look like they're sitting on the ground. How strange is that? Going from...
Just in case you didn't catch it, he threw that up on the screen for about a half second. And green auroras do not sit on the ground, they dance around up in the sky. This is a unique type of aurora that may have never been seen before and could possibly even be artificially induced. Call for an uprising, as auroras in the United States have been normalized over the past 18 months. We've probably seen them 6 or 8 times in the last 18 months as far south as Florida. They've been normalized. They've been happening on a regular basis. Prior to this, you could only see auroras in the northern latitudes. That's why they call them northern lights. Mr. MB3 used to show UVC readings on a regular basis. I've been watching him for about 6 years. And for the first couple of years, he was showing UVC readings, and he would show that UVA and UVB are in the high to extreme range. And then he would show that UVC readings, and there should always be 0 UVC at ground level other than in the Arctic Circle. Because in the Arctic Circle, that's where the magnetic field collapses back down in on the Earth, allowing that radiation to penetrate our atmosphere. That's why you see the aurora borealis in those northern regions, and that's why you get UVC at ground level in the Arctic Circle. We're catching UVC readings at ground level for the last few years, and we're starting to see the auroras on a regular basis. Now, channel Call for an Uprising, he's had 86 different channels under all different names, says he thinks they're doing this artificially with some technology like HARP, part of their Blue Beam, Operation Blue Binky. If there was ever an instance where I thought it could possibly be artificially induced, this aurora sitting at ground level is one where I think possibly that could be an artificially created aurora, because we've never seen that before. Let me know if you've ever seen that before in the comments section, but I never have. This is what auroras normally look like, up in the sky, wiggling around. Not on the ground at ground level, stationary.
Aurora Borealis. At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country, localized entirely within your kitchen.
Yes. So, the aurora borealis is being seen as far south as Florida, which means the magnetic fields are weakening. At least that was the scientific explanation 20 years ago in a video I watched when they talked about when the poles reverse themselves, the aurora borealis will be seen in other places. The northern lights will be seen all over the world because it's a magnetic field that's causing that phenomenon. And when the magnetic field becomes more fluctuated and the poles reverse themselves, it leaves us open to solar flares and other things that could short out the electrical grid and all blah, blah, yada, yada, blah, 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 which I've said so much. And here we are again with the Simpsons predicting this thing, like they always do.
So back to Mr. MB3 showing UV readings for 2018 and 19 and 20. Then he pretty much stopped showing those, but in 2021, 22, and 23, he's been showing genetic mutations of plants. Strawberries with the seeds inside the strawberry sprouting and shooting green leaves out of a strawberry. Same thing with tomatoes, peas, clovers. 4-leaf clover is supposed to be rare. They're all 3-leaf, and if you can find a 4-leaf one, that's rare. That's what makes it lucky. He was showing 5, 6, and 7-leaf clovers the size of your palm, and not all picked from the ground where someone collected them over a large area. Person pointing their camera at the ground, showing, look, there's one, there's one, there's one, all right next to each other. 5, 6, and 7-leaf clovers the size of your palm. These are genetic mutations, probably related to the radiation we're receiving in the form of UVC. He would also show sunflowers with multiple heads sprouting out of the head of the sunflower where it's supposed to be just the sunflower seeds in the middle of the sunflower, and you see 2 or 3 more heads popping out. Bell peppers with holes burned in them, amongst other genetic mutations. He's probably shown at least 10 different varieties of plants with genetic mutations. And now, in order to create aurora borealis or a geomagnetic storm, it doesn't even require a solar flare to hit the Earth's magnetic field. The standard solar wind speed and density is enough to penetrate the magnetic field and create the effects of a geomagnetic storm. The largest of which that we all recall is the Carrington event and all of the fires that started as a result of the Carrington event at the telegraph offices. There were probably fires elsewhere, but we didn't have the electrical infrastructure that we do now. We didn't even have telephones. We were still doing telegraph. But there were fires in that geomagnetic storm of the Carrington event at the telegraph stations. And electrical devices were turning on all by themselves, just like Mr. MB3 is showing constantly over the last few months, with 700 different videos that have been sent to him and a map that he's plotted over 300 different locations. We are under a constant geomagnetic storm these days, not just when we're getting hit by a solar flare, but on a constant. That's why I titled my video Slow Motion Carrington Event a couple of days ago. And here, Suspicious Observers is going to illustrate that.
We're watching the last 24 hours on our star where we find the sun was very quiet. We continue taking low-level flaring events, no significant coronal mass ejections. We do have some space weather here on Earth, but up there, things are quiet. The sunspots are pretty numerous, but they are pretty well distributed. Spread, not magnetically interacting, which is where the bigger flares would come from. Meanwhile, here at Earth, the solar wind has broken through Earth's magnetic field despite there being no significant shock signals, just a magnetized stream of plasma. It's been driving geomagnetic storm conditions for the last 18 hours, luckily just at a low level. And those
in the future in regards to a rust moon, for anybody out there that hasn't heard about what they're going to claim and what NASA's already claiming with this rust moon. They're telling you that science says that the moon eventually, because of the moon's interaction with the Earth's magnetic tail, that the moon is going to rust and start turning a different color, an orangey red color. This is a stream of particles that have been first trapped by the Earth's magnetic field, then blown out of it by the solar wind. So they're obviously going to use some.
So last weekend I came close to making a video about this, where you can see the thumbnail is this purple earpiece looking shape, and his title is, "Yes, this was watching you from 4 miles in the sky, just sitting there." And then a few days later he made this video, says, "Once you see this, you will never look at the sky the same," where he shows his new theory of why the trails are in the sky is that it's a byproduct of a gold mining operation where they're collecting gold from the sky. Now, Mr. MB3 usually downplays things and just kind of casually and nonchalantly goes, "Huh, look at that, that's kind of weird, huh?" In this video, he hypes it up and says this thing was really up there in the sky looking at you from 4 miles up there, hovering over your Earth, in the sky over your head. And I don't think he really believes that. There's no stars around this thing. It's over the top. I don't think he really believes that this is in the sky. So as you'll see, this person zooms in. They give you the full wide angle image, right? Wait for it. Here. You can see there's no stars in the sky around this thing that they zoom in on. Mr. MB3 has shown that he is a competent image analyst. On multiple occasions, he's shown that he didn't fall for this, and this isn't the first time that he's shown this. He showed this same thing 3 to 6 months ago, and pretended to believe in it back then as well. And when I was going to make this video last weekend, it occurred to me, maybe they're taking a temperature test, taking a reading, applying this as a stimuli to the audience to extract the response, taking a temperature of the consciousness and the discernment that his audience has. And he was announcing to those who can see, "Don't follow me if I lead these lemmings over a cliff. You need to follow your own perception of reality. If you're not just following someone, a sheep that's going to follow, you will be able to see this looks more like an earpiece that's stuck to the wall at the end of a long dark hallway or on the other side of a gymnasium basketball court." I don't think Mr. MB3 believes this was in the sky. Again, it looks like an earpiece. And he hyped this one up. Normally he kind of downplays things and goes, "Oh, that's kind of weird. Oh, yeah, check it out." Anyway, on to the next thing. On this one, he's like, look, that's in the sky above your head, looking at you from above your planet." And I was thinking of reasons why he might do this. And one idea I came up with, it's probably not right, but I do think they're engaged in some sort of psyop-y stuff, filtering the culture of consciousness on the consciousness farm, separating people, putting this out and seeing who responds in what way. And possibly in the future, if Mr. MB3 shows something that starts spreading and going viral and waking the normies up too quickly, they can then inject this into the stream of newbies who are Googling Mr. MB3. They can have someone make a debunking video and go, "Look, how idiotic. He showed his audience this, and I can see there's no stars around it, and so can anyone else. But he presented this as if it's in the sky, and all of his audience bought it. None of them pushed back. They all said, 'Oh, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. How dumb this guy is.' And the newbie would look at that and go, 'Psh, yeah, how idiotic. I can't believe this guy,' or his audience. They really thought that was real? A way to pour water, to throw a wet blanket on Mr. MB3's video footage. If he puts something out that goes viral and wakes up too many normies too fast, they can inject this as the antidote, as a counterbalance. So like I said, when a newbie, it starts spreading around normies and they go, because Mr. MB3 puts out the kind of content that could be dangerous if too many people see it, and it goes viral amongst normies too quickly. Those of us that have been watching MB3 for a while, we live in a completely different world than your family and friends who don't watch MB. Even amongst truthers, they are in a completely different world. Those who watch Mr. MB on a regular and those who do not. And you got here one step at a time, one video at a time over the course of a few years. If normies suddenly watch something that blows their mind and causes them to panic in ways that typical MB3 viewers don't, they're just like, yeah, that's nothing new and different. The normies, if you ask them what's the status of the UFO phenomenon, they'll reference the Phoenix Lights and Roswell and something they saw on the History Channel. MB3 viewers knows that he shows you 10 new and different types of aerial phenomenon UAP every week. You're living in a completely different world than those who don't watch Mr. MB3. So, I think this is part of some sort of psyop. I'm not sure exactly what the angle is, but possibly to discredit the MB3 brand if he shows something that starts spreading like wildfire amongst the normies and creates the potential to cause chaos in society. They can put something like this out and say, no, this guy's not credible. Look at this. He believed this shit, and all of his viewers did too, prospective normie. So this discredits whatever else starts circulating and causing panic. That may be the reason for this. Okay, so then Mr. MB3 puts out this video a few days ago titled, "Once You See This, You Will Never Look at the Sky the Same," where he proposes this idea that they're mining gold in the sky. Goes over some stuff about gold mining in the past. Says their gold is not native to planet Earth. It's got to be extraterrestrial. It comes from somewhere else. It isn't produced naturally within the Earth. And that there's enough gold in the sun to fill all of the Earth's oceans. And that those trails that you see in the sky are a byproduct of a gold mining operation. There he's showing you the inside of a jet engine and oil processing facility and shows you how similar they look. And he's proposing this idea that they're filtering the gold out of the air. And that's particularly when there's a solar flare coming in and hitting the Earth. That's when you're going to get the most gold out of the atmosphere from the sun, is when there's a solar flare hitting the Earth. And that's what those trails are all about. It's a gold mining operation in the sky, collecting all the nanoparticles of gold. Maybe it's mining gold, he says. Well, I showed you just a couple videos back what he really believes about those trails. That's hilarious. They're prospectors looking for the loot. So I posted this video just the other day showing you what Mr. MB3 really thinks about the trails and how they're there to mitigate the solar radiation penetrating the Earth and how our magnetic field is weakening. But I found another copy of it that I have with better audio, and it shows this. This was the thumbnail on that video that Mr. MB3 posted about 8 years ago and then put on private 2 years ago. He decided that's information that's inappropriate to show to the general public right now as this is actually happening. 8 years ago is a theory about what could be in the future, but now that it's actually happening, he decided to go ahead and put that one on private and put out a new theory about gold mining. This was the thumbnail on that video he posted 8 years ago. And you can see the words upper right, radiation, current, ULF radiation, quasi-static magnetic perturbations, the ionosphere boundary. This is a highly technical diagram. This wasn't just a theory that he had. This is his true understanding of it. So here you'll get the same video, and there's more to this video after this part if you want to fast forward if you already saw this the other day. But I would say this is worth watching 2, 3, 4, 5 times because I believe this is the reality of what's happening right now. And the magnitude of what's happening is why he decided to retract that video.
Okay, so we're going to work our way back to this diagram. You can see MB3 there in the lower right. This is a video from 6 years ago where he describes what these nanoparticles are in the air in a video titled "The Truth About Those Things, One Man's Theory." And it's exactly the same as my theory, except I was saying it based on a hunch. Artificial magnetic field being produced to protect us from the UV radiation. He obviously has more than a hunch. He has the technical understandings of how it works. But first...
So this video is one that I posted in 2022, and that video was 6 years old, so now it's probably 9 years old, and it was shortly after I posted these videos showing you Mr. MB3's theory about the trails that he put it on private.
Linked in this video will be this that was produced within the last week or so by the WTF files. It's only about a 10-minute video, but here in the description it summarizes it very well in a sentence or two. Earth's magnetic field is continuing to fail the Earth at an alarming rate, with seemingly no end in sight. Temperatures now predicted to reach 168 by the end of 2022. Remember Richie saying, that MB3, he's a shill. He never mentions the trails. No, he just has the bigger picture, so he doesn't bang on and on and on and on and on about it.
Guys, what you're looking at right here is the sky from this morning, about 8:30, from southeast Phoenix, Arizona. Chemtrailing was very, very prominent for just a few hours, and then it quit. The afternoon skies were very normal, but as you can clearly see this morning, it was not. And as usual, it's always around the proximity of the sun. In my case, they're normally flying from, like in this video, from March of this year. They're flying from that same direction, in fact, southeast to northwest, or from east to west. This particular day, you could tell it was just a full-blown, urgent type of situation. You could just feel the urgency literally in the air. I want to say this was March 22nd. And at one time during this video I took, I think there were 18 or 20 different lines right in through here. All I did with the video was convert it into a negative format so that the lines would be black, the sky would be white. So you could have a little different perspective. Here's my theory. And again, it's just a theory, okay? I'm not a scientist. I am a man who's given this a lot of thought, like most of you have, and this is what I've concluded. I think what we're looking at here is an attempt to save Earth's magnetic shields and atmosphere from something in space. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with the magnetic fields. I think they're sensing something that they're not used to. Like we noticed an anomaly back on April 23rd. This was in March. I think there was something that was noticed by whoever monitors or has the fine equipment. They noticed a breach in the atmosphere. When they notice a breach, lines, sometimes grids like you see right here, are implemented, probably depending on the severity of the breach. These lines are made up of, and again, this is just a theory. I'm entitled to a theory, just like you are. These lines are made up of these things right here, nanoparticles. This thing is basically a neutralizer. It collects energy, a foreign type of energy that your magnetic shields are not used to. So it needs some help. This thing here is made of aluminum and copper. It's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 times smaller than a human hair, so it can be dispersed in an aerosol form. Because you can set these things on the ground, and they're not going to do any good. They have to become airborne, and that's what they are. So they're dispersed by airplanes to be airborne. Independently, they're no good. But in a huge assembly of lines, they're apparently working pretty good. And what they're doing, this is a picture from this morning, May 11th. Southeast, flying to the northwest, in the proximity of the sun. You can see how they're thin. Those lines were just laid.
Notice it's yellow on the left and blue sun on the right. That's the temperature change in the light that's coming in. He'll explain that in a minute. Jay Dreamers has explained that. When you're measuring the temperature of light in Kelvin, it goes from the cooler light of red and then orange and then yellow and then white and then blue is the hottest. You can see that it's yellow on the left, and he took another picture 20 minutes later and it's blue on the right. He'll mention that here in a moment, referencing a yellow dwarf sun that heats up to something more like a white dwarf. And apparently that happened within 20 minutes, and that's why they were urgently laying down the trails.
20 minutes later, right here, coming back to the east, see how they've gotten bigger and fanned out? Those are the same lines. They've collected the energy that they're supposed to, and they disperse and fall to the ground. Maybe they don't fall to the ground. I think maybe they do, though, but it just depends on the strength of that given day and where the energy is coming in at. That's where the planes are sent to, and the spraying begins. That's just my theory, and I'm sticking to it. I've thought of every single scenario under the sun, and that's the only one that I can logically speak of. I don't think there's a sinister attack on humanity. I don't think that. That's too much work. They've been doing this for several years now. I just think it's just an old-fashioned attempt like Ben Franklin made back in the 1700s. You know, he invented the old lightning rod that captured the energy before it damaged your home, you know. That was through a grounding process. This is terminally airborne grounds it. Takes the energy and disperses it in the atmosphere, and it helps the atmosphere contain it. The source of this energy, well, again, that's a whole nother subject. Personally, I think it's a combination of two things. I'm a believer in the binary star system. I believe we have two suns. We just can't see the second sun. I don't think you can ever see it. I don't think one day we're going to wake up and see two stars in the sky that resemble something from Star Wars. I just don't think that's going to happen. However, I think our sun feels its close approach. And its close approach may be 10 billion, 20 billion miles away, farther. Who knows? But it can still feel it. It can sense it. When it senses it, it changes its energy output from, let's just call it a yellow dwarf. Say all we've ever known, it's got the energy output and the magnetic shields of Earth are used to a yellow dwarf energy output. Well, as the second sun approaches and gets closer, it feels it, changes its energy output to say that of a white dwarf. So the spraying begins, and most of it is right in front of the sun because it changes the output of the sun. Pay attention to your surroundings where you're at, guys. You're going to see an absence of man-made color. Look at car paint. Look at signs on buildings, mainly ones that face east, south, or southwest. You'll notice those signs are bleached. The color is fading rapidly. And that's because of an influenced UV light. And I think it's influenced by binary star. And it's affecting our star in a way that they're trying to deal with it the best way that they can. And I think our magnetic shields and our ionosphere sense it from time to time in the form of disturbances, maybe a disconnect. That's what happened here. They don't fully understand the disconnect phenomenon. When we notice these things, they take the data down and say that it was nothing. Well, it's very obvious it was. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean, it's not something that maybe we can't figure out together. But it's just the way it is. That's another reason I'm motivated to build our own magnetic field observatory. It's not that hard, but it's like anything else. It's funds that set us back and keep us from accomplishing these things. I don't like asking for money, guys. I've always done everything on my own. I don't like asking for money. That's not me. It's not who I am. But I definitely feel the urgency that this project does need to be done. If not by me, then by somebody else that has the money to do it. Get motivated and do it. Because the magnetic shields of Earth can tell you a wealth of information. Do you understand that? They can give you a whole wealth of knowledge. It's like a giant set of ears to outer space. And not only that, you can monitor the health of the magnetic shields themselves. If there is a planetary body near Earth or the solar system, those instruments are going to tell you. Do you realize that? They're going to tell you. But back to the chemtrails and the spraying, I think that's what's going on, guys. I do think there is a source of energy that the magnetic shields and the atmosphere in general are just having a hard time dealing with. I think they're spraying nanoparticles in the air that are acting as airborne energy diffusers. They're harnessing this energy. Once they're done harnessing their energy and doing, or that form of energy, doing their job, they fan out in a fashion just like I saw this morning, and they disperse. They may fall back down to Earth. I don't know. But they're probably assessing the damage, and they're probably weighing one against the other. I don't know. I have no idea. It's just a theory. But if you went to that Conrad Observatory website that I told you guys to look at last night, there's another wealth of knowledge. Those people are...
Those are the particles of glitter that I've shown when I scrub the burned wood, and you can see the glitter running down on the black backdrop of the charcoal.
Experts in the magnetic field. They've already told us that it's moved 20 degrees since they've been monitoring it, over 170 years. So you can do the math. And you can form a respectable conclusion based off of that. They said it's weakened 10% in that time as well. So is it weakening just because of day-to-day wear and tear? Or is it weakening because of an influence of a second source of energy? I don't know. But we could figure it out if we had the right equipment and we didn't have information being taken away from us. We had a steady flow of data that we could monitor these anomalies. We could figure it out. So that's what's motivated me, guys. And to be quite honest with you, I've never shared this with you guys, but my theory of what happened to the dinosaurs is not a catastrophic comet or a 6-mile wide asteroid that hit in the Gulf of Mexico, the Yucatan. I don't believe that. My theory is the magnetic shields went down and everything on Earth went down with them. That's my theory. I don't believe the comet thing hit the Earth and destroyed the atmosphere from within. I think the magnetic shields went down. They've done it before, and they're going to do it again. And I think this is an attempt to at least slow down the process until they can figure out a better approach. And that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. And if you can help with the cause, get some magnetic field equipment, that would be absolutely awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good.
So now we're
That image you just saw was what they call the Black Sun, and this is a image from a song called Purple Sun by Cannons, but I don't want to get too off topic. Let's try and keep some sort of semblance of streamlined going on here. 1,000 times smaller than a human hair. That he believes these are to diffuse the solar radiation coming in because our magnetic field is weakening and having a tough time keeping out that solar radiation, and these are doing what they can to help. Because we're in a process the likes of which took out the dinosaurs. So, in the last, he posted this video probably 8 years ago, and then he put it on private a year or two ago. After I've made videos about it, he puts it on private at least 6 years after he had posted the video. Because we're far enough into this now. 8 years ago, that was a theory about something that could potentially happen in the future. And so it was okay to show and tell people and talk about it then. But now, as it's happening, it is inappropriate to speak to these children like an adult. You have to speak to them at their own level. It is for their own good that you do not tell them the truth about what's happening. Tell them something like they're mining gold in the sky. So you could say, well, people learn and grow and their ideas change. And back then he thought it was to diffuse the solar radiation, and now he thinks it's a gold mining operation. Or he learned about the mentality of the audience that he's speaking to, and back then he thought that they were mentally and emotionally and spiritually developed enough that they could handle the truth. And since then, he's learned that we're all better off keeping them in the dark, particularly now that the operation is in full swing and it's happening. It is not appropriate to show and tell people who have not sought the truth what is happening while it's happening. It was one thing 8 years ago to talk about it as a prospective thing that could happen in the future. It's a totally different thing to be showing and telling people what's happening right now as it's happening. I've talked before about how there can be a greater degree of moral and ethical superiority in telling a lie than telling the truth. And the example I've used is telling kids there's a sewer monster that hides in the sewers, looks out the storm drains for little kids' ankles, and when he sees you in the street, he reaches up out of the storm drain, pops the manhole cover, and pulls you down into his dungeon. And anyone knows already what the purpose of that story is. It's to keep the kids safe, because if you just tell them, I don't want you to get hit by a car, it doesn't register with them. And so the underlying priority is to prevent them from experiencing the pain and suffering of getting hit by a car. And it's more effective to achieve that underlying priority by telling them a story. And likewise, telling them a story about mining gold in the sky is a better way to achieve that underlying priority of preventing them from experiencing the pain and suffering than it is to tell them the truth. Thus, it is a greater degree of moral and ethical superiority to tell them a story that will effectively achieve the underlying goal of preventing them from pain and suffering. Because if they learn the truth, it's over. They will become a self-destructive force. Just like the same reason they don't tell you if there's going to be an incoming asteroid that's going to hit the Earth, everyone knows they wouldn't tell the public. Because the public themselves would go into self-destruct mode and start cannibalizing one another, because that is their degree of mentality. Maybe 8 years ago, he was projecting onto others his own characteristics and attributes and thought that everyone else is like me, they're just as interested in the truth, and they will respond like adults. And he has since learned that the audience you're speaking to is like children with stunted growth and arrested development with animalistic qualities of character, and that they will tear each other up. They cannot handle this truth. Law and order would break down. The fabric of society would unravel. Thus, it is a higher degree of morality to tell them a story about gold mining in the sky rather than something of biblical proportions that's happening right now, and allow them to respond to that in the way that they would, which will be self-destructive. Prevent them from hurting themselves. Tell them a story. Yesterday, Mr. MB3 puts out this video titled, Have They Been Lying to Us? The Eye-Opening Truth About Earth's Closest Neighbor. And he shows you 6 or 8 times where people have sent him another celestial body by the moon. Videos of another celestial body by the moon. Let's see if we can get that one. Just watch. He shows you 5 or 6 different examples. For some reason, it's not letting me scrub through. He shows you 5 or 6 different examples where there appears to be a secondary celestial body in the sky beside the moon. Keep that in mind. And in the video where I show you what Mr. MB3 really believes about those trails, he also says he's a believer in the second sun, the black sun, another celestial body that comes around, and he doesn't say this part, but that second sun could be surrounded by planets that are orbiting it and moons that are orbiting those planets. But he said he believes there's a second sun and it comes through and affects the magnetic field of the Earth. Here is. And this idea that the second sun comes through with all of its own planets syncs up with what we were being shown by the YouTube channel Final Days. And all of those spheres that are seen in the sky on the FAA weather cams that can still be seen, particularly Wolf Creek, Colorado, on a regular basis, and other weather cams. But she showed enough of those spheres in the sky that appear to be other planets orbiting our own, that would also mesh up with the idea that the second sun has arrived, and along with it is a bunch of other planets and moons. Is a music video called Outro by M83, and I can't play it, but I can scrub through it for you, and it has, notice, I'll just link it in the description. It has images from what I believe is from the movie Melancholia, where another planetary body comes in, approaches the Earth, it's the great wedding, the holy harvest, and electricity's coming out from her fingertips. Not now, Jeff, I'm making a video. Electricity's coming out from her fingertips, and it's also coming up from the poles behind her. That other planetary body has its own magnetic field that interacts with our magnetic field, and we experience an electrical charge in our atmosphere. And again, the title of this song is Outro, our swan song. With something of biblical proportions happening, I'm thinking Mr. MB3 has learned that it's inappropriate to share the truth with people that didn't spend their whole life pursuing the truth, offering them answers to questions they didn't ask, to a population that has demonstrated that they have the mental and emotional and spiritual characteristics that would cause great harm. They are animals. They have not cultivated their consciousness to a higher level of sentience where they could be trusted with the truth. It would be a curse upon them if you shared with them the truth. That's why he switched that video over to private after having had it posted for 6 years. Possibly because he saw that I'm over here drawing people's attention to it. And then he put out a new video with a different theory about how they're mining gold in the sky. And I would still support him if and when he asked. I will still watch every video of his. And there is a potential that they're sifting and separating and filtering consciousness by putting things out, stimulus, and monitoring and measuring and gauging the response to establish who is where on the learning curve in this culture of consciousness. This is the filtration process. We've been through a distillation and a refinement process, which requires heat and pressure. I'm not sure exactly why he's putting out these things, but I trust he knows what he's doing, and or whoever he's working with knows what they're doing. But what I do no longer trust is the general public, the audience that you're reaching on the internet. They don't know what they're doing. You give them the truth, they're going to weaponize it and utilize it for self-destructive purposes. So remember, I've put out a few videos recently showing upward lightning coming out of the ground up through 4 of our national monuments on New Year's Eve. 4 of the national monuments. Prior to that, a month or two, I'd shown you electricity coming up out of the torch of the Statue of Liberty. So Mr. MB3 here is showing you the flickering lights. That's part of our magnetic field being influenced and affected, weakening and fluctuating. And he's about to show you noctilucent clouds. Those used to be limited to the Arctic Circle. Those are increasing just like the auroras, just like plasma fires, just like genetic mutations, just like the UVC at ground level, just like power surges and power outages. He's trying to show the truth and put it out there for everyone to see, but limit and mitigate the damage that that information can do by preventing it from making it to those who are still sound asleep and not wake them up too fast. Power surges and power outages. Let's fast forward this just a little bit. And with something of biblical proportions, the likes of which we are talking about, it makes it understandable that it would be immoral to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, if it's going to be destructive to people. Come on, show us the surge. When stuff like this is happening, it is best to let them not notice if they don't notice. If they're not noticing the trees burning on the inside, it is inappropriate to show them and tell them. And so I can understand why he might be doing a little bit of psyop-y stuff, filtering out the culture of consciousness of his viewers, separating those who just follow him and go, wow, that's awesome. That's up in the sky, huh? From those who think for themselves and those who are capable of receiving the truth. That's his map of all of the flickering lights around the world that he's been receiving hundreds and hundreds of videos of. So, this may be the precursor to a personally custom-tailored algorithm that delivers each individual a video feed that's tailored to their own level of consciousness based on all of their previous interactions with the algorithm. So, on the video where he showed the floating earpiece in the sky, no one pushed back. On this one where he shows that they're mining gold in the sky, totally disrespectful to your audience to insult our intelligence. No one was buying it. I read like 40 or 50 comments. They all basically say, I used to have respect for you. I no longer do. I'm unsubscribing, shit like that. One of them said, whoever owns Mr. MB3 must have decided that he needs to purge a lot of his audience and get rid of a lot of subscribers. Yeah, maybe that was the case. If you're just following one person and trusting them to deliver you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, it's okay that he puts out truth and twisted truth and half-truths, because the general public is not to be trusted with the whole truth and nothing but the truth, or it would cause all of society to unravel. It is necessary to put out, to manage their perception and manipulate their perception. I know that now. After having spent 7 years doing this, coming up on my 8th summer, I used to think we were all the same. I used to think I could just deliver the truth to the people and that they're just like me. And they'll stop what they're doing, recognize this is a greater priority than anything else that matters that they're spending their time paying their attention to. And I was wrong. I've learned. The general public, the audience you're speaking to over YouTube, we're all not the same. That's what we all do. We project our own qualities of character onto other people as if we're all generally the same and think that they have the same general priorities and principles as I do and will express the same standards of behavior as I have. And he has probably learned over the last 8 years since he published that video showing what he really thinks of the trails, that those people you're trying to share your truth with are not worthy to receive it. That's the nanoparticles. And they stay up in the air for some time, but then they come down and saturate everything. And like he said, they're balancing the cost versus the benefit. Because yeah, there may be some sort of damage, but compared to the alternative of allowing all that solar radiation in, they've determined it's better on the cost-benefit, risk-reward, liability-profitability ratio to spray that to prolong the process, keep us from going the path of the dinosaurs. Or maybe they're mining gold in the sky. yeah, they're mining gold in the sky. So the content creator, formerly known as Call for an Uprising, he now has a couple channel, Nations Conspire and Ones That Can See. He has this idea that they are producing artificial auroras, and he has some documentation to back it up. They claim that they can do this. But I think it's probably a natural phenomenon, and they would rather you think these fires are directed energy weapons. Yeah, we're in control. It's just a man behind the curtain pushing buttons and levers. Continue paying your taxes and obeying the laws. Likewise with the Northern Lights. When people start to see Northern Lights all around the world, it's a good idea to have a backup story and go, oh yeah, that was us. Yeah, we got this harpy stuff. We can do that. That's just us. Yeah, it's not a epic cataclysm event going down. We're just playing with our new tech. Like Project Blue Binky.
We're talking about tornado warnings going from the northest point in North America to the southest point in North America. And I want to let everybody know, at the same time that this is happening, if you haven't heard either, something else they've desensitized everybody to, the Northern Lights are going to be appearing across 10 states. Some news outlets are reporting across 20 states. So we have the Northern Lights appearing at the same time as this bizarre weather pattern where 20 states are being hit with tornadoes out.
And as you can see on the right side of the article, that's March 15th, 2025. Current events.
At once. And that should be all you need to know. And if you're saying, I don't understand, the Northern Lights and tornadoes, how does that correlate? Well, I'll get into that after I show you the horror that's occurring around our country right now. We're seeing tornadoes. And I mentioned earlier about how the Northern Lights are conveniently popping up at the same time, because that's very convenient. Now, as I always mentioned in my videos, the more you see something, you become conditioned. You become desensitized. The fact that we're seeing the Northern Lights so often, nobody is asking questions anymore. Nobody's saying, aren't I supposed to go to Alaska? Aren't I supposed to get one of those Carnival cruises to see the Northern Lights? Oh, no. You could be in New York. You could be in Florida. You could be in Arkansas. They pop up everywhere. Now, don't be suspicious about why they pop up everywhere now, because we're telling you that it's normal all of a sudden, right? That's why there's articles out there, why we've seen the Northern Lights so often lately, because they make up science to convince you that this is perfectly normal when it's not normal. They say things like the Northern Lights have had an especially active year between 2024 and 2025 that has far exceeded scientists' expectations. Aurora displays hit a 500-year peak in 2024. NASA said, which the agency expects will continue throughout 2025 as the sun remains in its solar maximum, the period in its 11-year cycle during which solar events like flares and coronal mass ejections are more common. Some of the strongest solar flares in decades have been observed over the last year, including an X 9.0 level flare in October, which caused Northern Lights to be visible as south as Florida. So not just Alaska anymore. So you might be saying, well, what are you getting at? I don't really understand. Well, for starters, this whole solar maximum is the reason that they're saying it's normal to see the Northern Lights. Although I was alive 11 years ago, I don't know if anybody out there is 11 who's listening. I would assume most of you were alive 11 years ago. I don't remember ever hearing about the Northern Lights appearing over Florida or other states because it wasn't normal, because it's not normal, because this is man-made. So what am I getting at? Well, if you didn't know, up in Alaska, where the northern lights, where everybody would think they'd have to go. If you ever wanted to see the northern lights, you saw it in a movie or a picture, they say, well, you got to go up to Alaska. I mean, that's the whole reason you go, to see the northern lights. People would spend money on cruises to get up there, not because they were going to lay out in the sun on the beach. They wanted to see the northern lights. But what they don't know is that HAARP runs experiments up in Alaska that causes artificial auroras to occur. And it's been documented by HAARP themselves that what they're doing up at HAARP, which they can't explain themselves, which I'll get into in a minute, is actually creating artificial auroras in the sky. In fact, they want to let you know why they're doing it, in case you're wondering. And they say why scientists use these radio transmitters to create artificial auroras. And this is what these radio transmitters look like up at HAARP. And you might be saying to yourself, okay, so there's radio transmitters up at HAARP, and there's also these NOAA towers that you've probably seen as well, or NOAA towers that we can find here in America also, but not in every single town. So you're probably thinking to yourself, all right, so you're telling me that those antennas that are sitting up in Alaska can cause the northern lights to occur down in Florida? I don't understand what you're getting at, sir. Well, what I'm getting at is, if you read between the lines, those scientists created artificial auroras using radio transmitters. And if you don't know what a radio transmitter is, well, look no further than your 5G towers. They're essentially radio transmitters that send and receive radio signals to and from devices and other cell towers, enabling wireless communication. But that's not what they're really actually there for. If you're actually falling for that, well, think again. So now you should have connected the dots between the fact that, okay, if HAARP up there can create fake aurora borealis, fake northern lights, and 5G towers do the same exact thing as HAARP, and there's ones in every single town now, which was part of the purpose of that outbreak that occurred, because they all popped up in every single town across America during the outbreak, actually across the earth, as we all know, during the outbreak. So we have these radio transmitters everywhere now. And you might be saying, okay, so let's see, tornadoes, radio transmitters, 5G towers, and HAARP. What are we getting at? Well, what we're getting is, when HAARP is on, when we know that they're doing this up at HAARP in the past, there would be northern lights appearing, because what they were doing was shooting radio waves into the sky, electrifying the sky. And by manipulating the ionosphere at HAARP, they were able to harness weather modification, like steering storms or creating tornadoes by sending enough energy up into the ionosphere to see one of those spirals come right back down. And if you haven't been paying attention to the world around us, HAARP, those NOAA towers, the 5G towers, chemtrails, weapons used to produce all of the weather around us that you're seeing. Earthquakes, tsunamis, cyclones, tornadoes, floods, you name it, they can manipulate and create it. And sure, you might want to say that I'm a conspiracy theorist saying that they could do those types of things, but why don't you just look at the government documents for yourself? Here's one from 1996. Weather as a force multiplier. Owning the weather in 2025. So if that's not enough for you, that we have these bizarre tornadoes appearing across the entire state, north to south, right? We're not talking about Tornado Alley, a couple pop-up tornadoes in Oklahoma. They're literally showing you a map where America is covered from the top point to the bottom with tornado warnings, while all these towers are now up around us. And oh, by the way, there might be northern lights seen across America during the weekend. How convenient, because we all know that those radio transmitters up in Alaska can create northern lights, and so can those 5G towers around us. So why don't I just let the scientists explain it to you if you don't believe me? Why don't I just bring in some of the scientists from...
We can think of the ionosphere as a natural plasma laboratory, the conditions of which are difficult to replicate in an actual physical laboratory. And so this is just another way of learning about the world around us. Why would it be beneficial? I can't speak for the applications, but it's a mystery to solve.
So, of course, HAARP doing these experiments in the ionosphere, what they're doing is heating up the sky. They heat up the sky. There's a combination of things that occur. But think about all of these frequencies that are coming out of these 5G towers. Remember, when these towers went up, nobody, even the biggest of sheeple, who think that all this stuff is crazy stuff, not one of them would agree with the fact that your phone is operating faster than it did before those towers went up. Now, they told us those towers had to go up for 5G to function. And we all had to get to 5G to catch up to China and Russia, right? So, of course, like sheeple do, the sheeple just give in and they don't push back and they don't learn about radiation. And instead, they're trained to come after people like us when all we're trying to do is prevent people from getting cancer or giving the government the opportunity to create weather modification in every single town in America. Because if you've noticed, those towers are up absolutely everywhere. Every highway, every town, with, in fact, multiple towns. Some towns, they get cute and they try to hide it in the trees or on the water tower. You know, they got a little, they got a little spunk in them, the big brother there, right? Trying to pretend like, well, these sheep won't even notice it. We'll just stick it on top of the water tower. Unless, of course, they were just trying to be cheap and didn't want to put the entire tower up. But these things are all around us now. So they can't really tell you what the purpose is. It's a mystery what they were doing at HAARP. But we don't need to look at HAARP anymore. We should just stop even paying attention to HAARP. Because what's going on up at HAARP doesn't matter. HAARP isn't turning on the HAARP machine and creating a hurricane or a tornado down in Florida. We have these weather modification things all around us right now. Remember those stories about people in the UK that were going nuts taking those things down? Yeah, those people went to jail forever, for life, for trying to take those down. You'd think that the government would be more concerned about, people who commit murder, who only get slaps on the wrist, like 20 years in jail. Oh, they're getting worse. Don't you dare go after those towers. In fact, we'll send a message so that nobody else goes after those towers. And of course, it's about more than just weather modification. These things are radiation. These things are literally microwaves that are sitting all around us. So we don't have to focus on HAARP anymore because we can focus everywhere now, knowing that they have the ability to do this everywhere. And of course, doubt as well. Prayers to everybody out there who is affected or who will be affected by this. But enjoy the northern lights, everybody. Isn't that pretty? That man-made aurora light in the sky. They can't do that. Oh yeah, they can, and they are. It's just a matter of whether or not you want to live in Pleasantville and think that everything's sunshine and rainbows, or you want to wake up to the fact that your government has the ability to do this, and they're using it and doing it because they can get away with it. Because otherwise, if they came to your door with a tank, the people would rise up against them. This way, well, all they'll do is just shut down people who actually bring attention to this, as we've seen them do time and time again. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.
So it would be convenient for the powers that be to maintain their lifestyle, which is afforded to them by the current status quo system, if everyone plays along and just keeps doing what they're doing. Everything around you happening, it's not the apocalypse, it's not a cataclysmic earth cycle we're going through. It's the men in black behind the curtain pushing buttons and levers, creating everything from the fires to the earthquakes, the tornadoes, the aurora borealises. Yep, it's just all the men in black. They're all powerful. Go back to paying your taxes and obeying the laws, because if people saw and believed that this is biblical proportion stuff that none of the governments have any control over, the governments wouldn't have any control over the people. Society would not continue to function. So it's important that they get these narratives out there. And some people like to chase the try and pull the mask off Old Man Withers like they're Scooby-Doo investigators chasing down the evildoers. And they don't want people to see that this is something bigger than anyone has any control over. Like here, Jeff Bush, that's been photobombing this video, sent me a thing, says 2 Peter, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved and the elements shall melt with a fervent heat. I think what's really going on here is more like what's depicted in the music video Flux by Poppy. Look at that phoenix on the left. The one on the right kind of looks like a phoenix too. But I made this video a while back, Truth in Music, Current Events, showing the music video Flux by Poppy, where the sun pukes out a bunch of rainbows, just like what we were actually seeing in the sky. See those rainbows? Those are in the real world. This is in the music video where the sun's puking these rainbows down on the earth. And it creates a bunch of genetic mutations. And poor Poppy's just trying to... Oh, there's the blimies, the guys with their head in their chest. And poor Poppy's just trying to make her way through this world full of genetic mutants that are getting twisted by the radiation. I think this is what's happening. And you can see the filament there on the sun. Yeah, I don't think it's the men in black pushing buttons and pulling levers, making everything from the aurora borealises to the fires with their directed energy to the tornadoes and the hurricanes and the earthquakes. No, this is really happening. It's not Old Man Withers underneath the mask. This is actually happening. But people would rather chase those phantoms of Old Man Withers because seeing this for what it is far less comfortable than imagining that all you got to do is chase down the bad guy who's on the other end of that directed energy, and then all will be well and you can go back to life as it's always been. And it doesn't require the sun to puke a big one on us. When the magnetic field decreases, the sun's regular daily strength is like a giant solar flare on a continuous ongoing basis. You gotta flux and flow, yeah. That's just how it goes, yeah. You gotta flux and flow, flow, flow. I won't fear what I don't know.